Well, I've been sitting here in my room by myself, hanging out, like thinking that, I might have a co-host here today. And it was looking pretty good there for a while. And, then I said, I think it was Jason that said, maybe why don't we just have a Sean Steyer's solo show tonight? I was like, well, that could be an idea. We might have to give that a shot. But lo and behold, this guy showed up.
Yes. First time of the week.
There he is, Mr. Technology.
Yeah, seriously. This is embarrassing. Like I mean, I'll be the first one to say it too. This is all my fault. When you've got the mute button hit on your laptop, you can't hear anything coming out of it. What's happening? I don't know. Oh, it's the mute button. Oh my God.
In and out of the browser, reboot the computer, wait for all the updates that come with the computer reboot. And then finally,
unbelievable. I was like, wait a minute.
Oh, the mute button.
Oh, I can hear you now. Amazing.
Crazy how that works.
Yeah. So I'm on location though, which is kind of fun.
Yes.
And by the way, renovated press box, Sean Steyer.
Really?
They just waited for you to leave, apparently.
I guess so.
It looks pretty nice up here. I'll have to give you a tour later on. But yeah, they gutted it. I mean, it's
Is it any more accommodating? Like, is it, like, can you see from the back row and stuff like that now? Or
I mean, yeah, better. Yeah,
okay.
for sure, better. And the coaches' boxes are bigger, and the media area is obviously a little bit smaller, but it's much nicer. New countertops, new windows,
wow.
They actually did a decent job without tearing the whole thing down. Like they kept the bones, you know what I mean? But
all right.
So yeah,
you're over there for a track meet?
Track meet,
right?
And it was supposed to start at 5. It is now 5:12, and it has yet to start.
Well, I saw something last night on social media, or maybe it was even this morning, that said something about like senior night for the track team, 6:00.
Yes,
when stuff started.
So track is weird, Sean. They do like field events and the 4x800 relay like first, and then they do like the national anthem and the rest of the meet.
Gotcha.
It's very weird. So like all that was supposed to start at 5, and then everything else starts at 6.
Really telling the kids those events matter
which is the event that my son went to state in, and they're treated like the redheaded stepchild of track and field. Yeah. Like nobody cares.
Vince is at Mishawaka High School.
Yes,
is where he is. For those asking, he's in the Mishawaka High School football stadium press box.
Yes.
Today. Are you working as the administrator? Are you in official capacity over there today?
I told them that
for representing Penn.
Yeah, so that I would take care of that business. One of the assistant ADs is actually the head throws coach. So she's actually here, but you can just focus on coaching. So
gotcha.
In case, nothing ever happens, but in case something does, I'm here. And shout out to Mark Paulsgrove, the AD at Mishawaka, for hooking me up. And then, of course,
very nice.
Matt Rendell of Mishawaka Network gave me a network cable. So, just the help all around was fantastic. So that way I can do the show with you. Woo!
Matt Rendell.
Still
got the hair?
He does. Yeah, rocking the IU hoodie as well. So he's staying strong.
All right, say hi to him when you're leaving. Then
I will do that. I will do that. And it's a very blustery day. I don't know if you've been outside.
It is. I tried to go. I was about to go outside once, and just the wind in my garage.
Yeah,
when I opened it up was enough to keep me inside. So
very happy to be in the press box right now. Let's just put it that
blame
way.
me.
You know what I mean? So we got stuff to talk about, Sean.
We do. We have a lot of things to talk about today. So let's get at it. Fill in the blank. With a scrimmage to watch tomorrow and the blue gold game next week, you feel blank about Notre Dame football right now.
This isn't a great answer, but I feel good. I feel good about it. It's still very early, obviously, and I think you're going to get more tomorrow than we're going to get in a week. At the actual blue gold game, because you're going to have 1s versus 1s and 2s versus 2s and guys that are actually going to be playing next to each other, right?
Exactly.
And the blue gold game is a draft. So, that's not as much fun. It's fun. It's fun for the players. I listened to all your guys' shows, by the way, this week. And I agree with Jesse. It's more fun that way to do like a draft and things like that. But from our standpoint, we want to see the ones and then the two,
Exactly. We want to see depth chart
100%.
and we want to see depth chart going up against each other.
Yes.
So
100%.
that's what helps us. Yeah.
There's some battles out there, and what's this linebacking core going to look like against this offensive line? All of these different, sub stories and things like that. Tomorrow is going to be nice. Tomorrow is going to be real nice, and I'm a little disappointed I'm not going to be able to see it, but I'm counting on you and Brian to fill me in on all the deets.
I am a little concerned. Probably my biggest concern is the depth in the secondary. That's
fair.
That's what's kind of got me right now. Now, I mean, like back into the secondary could end up being really good. You're going to get Rod Hurd in, the Northwestern transfer this summer, and you've had Adon Schuler and Luke Talich battling it out this spring and playing pretty well this spring, it sounds like. But they're obviously unproven, and that's why tomorrow will kind of give us a glimpse of that. But like the corners, though, without Benjamin Morrison, that's where I'm most concerned. What exactly happens there? They might have to go out into the transfer portal and see what they can find to give themselves a little bit more depth along those lines. And the portal opens next week.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you lose Clarence Lewis, who was a quality depth piece. He wasn't going to start at any of the positions, but he could be a comparable backup, all over the secondary. He could be a backup at nickel. He could be a backup at corner. He could be a backup at safety. I mean, he provided quality depth. And so you lose him, obviously, to the portal. He wants to start someplace. I don't blame him. That's fine. And then you lose, obviously, Benjamin Morrison to the injury. And it's like, okay, now we're down 2. And all of a sudden the depth is a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so it forces you to think about, okay, well, if you're in the season, I think everybody feels good about the top 3 corners, right? If everybody's healthy. But if one guy goes down, what do you do now? So I agree with you. I think that's something that they're going to have to look at moving forward into the fall, because they're one injury away from being very, very rocky at corner.
Right. Jason says might not be easy to find a corner that's willing to just be depth. Finding a surefire starter could upset some things in the room. I mean, that there's some truth to that in terms of like the depth piece part. You're going to tell anyone, look, you're going to have a chance to come in and compete for the job. I mean, that's basically the standard line, and they'll stick to it. They're not just going to crown somebody. They're going to give the best guy the job. I mean, the X factor is obviously Benjamin Morrison.
Yes.
So we're obviously not going to see him this spring. Only he and they know the exact extent of his injury and how great the need is to potentially go out to the portal. Because if it is something that they think right now is going to keep Benjamin Morrison out past the start of the season, then obviously that changes the conversation that they're having with potential guys coming in via the portal.
100%.
As well.
100%. And it's kind of like it's very similar to me to one of the quarterback conversations that we were having back when they were trying to, do you bring in a Riley Leonard or something like that, or do you bring in a depth piece? Remember that whole conversation we would have?
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of guys out there that are in the portal right now that would crawl over each other to be a rotational player at Notre Dame.
Right.
You said, look, we've got a spot in our 2 deep. Okay. And if you look at snaps played at Notre Dame over the past X amount of years, this is how many snaps our second corner got, right? Whether it's actually in the secondary, on special teams, whatever the case may be. I do think that there is an appetite for that from guys in the portal, because you have to remember, look, if they're healthy and Notre Dame's got their 2 starting corners, whether that's Christian Gray or whether that's, Mickey and then across from Ben Morrison, there aren't many corners in the country that are that good. They're going to come and unseat one of those 2. That's just, they've got potentially the 2 best corners in the country, right? And so whoever you bring in is going to be a depth piece regardless. And so they're going to get on the field. It just might not be as a starter.
Well,
and in this secondary and on this team with a chance to go far, there's going to be people that want to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, again, like going into tomorrow, we're going to get a much better much better idea of like what Micah Bell looks like.
100%.
Exactly.
Oh, for sure.
And again, that's why it's good to see ones versus ones, two versus twos, and considering the depth of that position, I would imagine he might even get some first team reps in some different situations. And there's enough depth of the receivers that he's going to be going up against quality no matter what. So we'll get a much better idea, much better feel for what he looks like. I mean, that's I think my biggest concern. There is still some concern. We're obviously not going to see Riley Leonard tomorrow unless something just crazy happens and they decide, oh, it's time for Riley Leonard to get some live snaps in this scrimmage.
God, I hope not.
After foot surgery.
If that happens, Sean, I'm on the fence about, okay, is it good for him to be at least throwing to his receivers at practice? And I'm on the fence about that's okay. And then he should be wrapped in bubble wrap and nowhere near humans. Like I'm in the middle, to be honest.
I'm at least more okay with him just doing some throwing and some light work. I don't want to see him there's no reason for him to do anything live.
Right, absolutely.
This week or next week.
If he goes out and he even takes the field, okay, and has like football pants on, I'm going to be upset.
Yeah.
Either
I mean, it sounds like, he might be like trying to dress in somebody else's jersey and show up out there on the field. Just, kind of the attitude that he has.
Man, I would have two armed guards like around him. Like, dude, you're not going anywhere.
I know.
Put him in the press box. Like, just be away from everything. I mean, it worries me. It just does, Sean. It worries me whether, going up and down stairs and whatever. Like, you want to keep him as healthy as possible because the season does ride on the health of Riley Leonard. I mean, it's that simple to me. It really is.
I think so too. I've said before, I think that Steve Angeli can go out there and win you some games, depending on which games that we're talking about. But in the biggest games, they absolutely need Riley Leonard.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Steve Angeli can win you a lot of games. I've never said otherwise. It's absolutely true. Is he a national championship quarterback? I still say the answer is no. And there's not much he's going to be able to do that I haven't seen already that would make me feel otherwise.
Unless he goes out there and shreds tomorrow.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because he'll actually be going up against, better opponents than he's in his last spring.
He's going to be the number one quarterback tomorrow. Again, assuming that there's no Riley Leonard.
Well, tomorrow for sure. Like, you're right. If he goes out there and shreds it tomorrow, as opposed to the blue gold game, I was thinking blue gold game. If he goes out there and he is just like on fire and goes like, 18 for 19 with 3 touchdowns and against this defense, even without Benjamin Morrison, we're going to have a discussion about who Steve Angeli actually is.
But tomorrow is still why it's so it's so good that we actually get to see what happens tomorrow in a live scrimmage setting.
To be
what they call the Jersey scrimmage.
Yes.
I am too. Like,
I'm shocked.
And we're actually going to be up in the press box, and the whole thing, kind of the typical view from up there. So that's where we'll get to watch it. We'll get to talk to Marcus Freeman afterwards. But the fact that we will see a first team unit against, offense versus defense and get to see some of that stuff and exactly how they split it up. We're going to have the majority of people are still going to base their opinions on what they see in the blue gold game. But people like our viewers, listeners, subscribers who are going to be listening here next week to the things that we're talking about, they'll have something to contrast it against a little bit. And that's why tomorrow is so important.
It really is.
Like, even if the general public doesn't get to see it, we will get to see it. And we'll get to share our thoughts on it, and exactly how those guys looked, and we can, so we can say, hey, pump the brakes on what you saw in this public display of, football fun or whatever, the blue gold game, because we still have this to base it on, or we'll be able to double down on some things as well. Like,
absolutely.
If you're really good at one, really good in the other, then you can say, oh, really good. I'm really encouraged about this. But if you get kind of a split decision, that's where you're going to have some balancing to do.
Yeah.
But that's good. It just gives us more of a body of work, more things to compare it on. And we're not just basing it on a drafted game where you've got, ones through threes playing together.
Right. There's
like
only
that.
so much you're going to be able to glean from that, from next Saturday, from the blue gold game, right? I mean, that's why I'm so upset I'm going to miss tomorrow, but I trust you guys are going to be able to, because I do think a lot of what we think is going to happen is going to happen. And there might be a surprise here or there or whatever. And there's obviously still competition at a lot of spots too. So this is what the coaches, if you want to take a peek, behind the curtain and what the coaches are looking at, this is really the last opportunity for the coaches to really see what these guys have. You can pull stuff from the blue gold game and everything, but it's a glorified, scrimmage type of situation. You know what I mean? And it's you can get some stuff from it, but you're going to get way more from this Saturday than next Saturday. I mean, they're going to run like 80, 90 plays. I mean, I'm also hoping to see either or Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr get some time with the ones. I'm curious to see if that happens, to be honest with you.
I would imagine Minchie would. I don't know if they'll push Carr that far up.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard good things about Carr, and but he's still an early enrollee freshman. I mean, that would be a big jump, obviously. Yeah. But we've heard a lot of really good things about Kenny and how he's a bit like Brett Favre, basically, trying to squeeze it into tight windows and, fearless and all these different things. I mean, there's not much. I mean, you've got Kenny Minchie on this end of the spectrum. You've got Steve Angeli on this end of the spectrum. They couldn't be more different quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like, you got the gunslinger, athletic, the whole thing. And then you got Steve Angeli, who's the game manager. And that's not a bad thing. He'll get you in and out of good plays. He's just not going to make any dynamic plays.
Brock Purdy's a game manager. He went to a Super Bowl.
To a Super Bowl. So, exactly. That's why it's not a cut down. It's just
still playing winning football.
Two diabolically different styles of quarterback. I'd like to see both of them with the ones tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. By the way, I usually wait to the end of the show to ask our YouTube viewers to hit the like button. I would like you guys and gals who are in here right now, just hit the like button real quick, because I've been doing some poking around and stuff like that. There's some fishy things going on out there, and I think that there's an entity or two that's trying to mess with our algorithm a little bit.
That's messed up.
When you look at like, I have a pretty good idea of who it is, but I would just like to ask our viewers who are fans of the show, obviously, hit the like button if you would, to kind of help boost the channel a little bit.
Interesting. Look at the conspiracy theories.
I know. I've noticed some things lately. I've noticed some things, Vince, and I put on my private detective hat, and I was like, I don't know about this. Shady stuff going on around here. Like I said, I've got a pretty good idea of who it might be. But
interesting.
But
okay.
It can be solved, I think, or at least somewhat corrected if our viewers just hit the like button for us. We would appreciate it. So ESPN put out a list this week of 30 coaches who will define the next decade of college football. Have you seen this list yet?
I saw what you gave me.
Okay. All right. No. Number 1 is Kirby Smart. I guess no surprise there. Kalen DeBoer, new head coach at Alabama, former Washington coach, is number 2. Then you've got Steve Sarkisian at Texas, number 3. Ryan Day, 4th. Lane Kiffin is 5th. Luke Fickell, now at Wisconsin, is number 6. Dan Lanning, 7. Mike Norvell at Florida State is number 8. And then Marcus Freeman comes in at number 9. Here's what they say. Now, Al Washington is on this list as well. We'll save that part of the conversation. We're going to talk about Marcus Freeman first. They say after rising to prominence as Fickell's defensive coordinator at Cincinnati, Freeman actually jumped ahead of Fickell to snare the Notre Dame job in 2021 at age 35. He's dealt with some bumps, among other things. He's on his 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 seasons, but he still won 19 games in 2 seasons. Fighting Irish finished 2023 smoking hot, throwing heavy recruiting prowess, an average signing class ranking 9.3, and 2 straight huge quarterback transfer signings, Hartman and Leonard. You have a coach with massive potential. So ESPN puts Marcus Freeman, number 9 on its list of the 30 coaches who will define the next decade of college football. So do you think 9, is this the right spot for Freeman? What do you think about him just being on this list?
First of all, I think he absolutely belongs on this list because this is projecting to the future, right? This isn't the now, it is over the next decade. And if you look at the track record right now of Marcus Freeman and you look at recruiting and you look at staff retention / staff hiring and you look at, the progressive nature of Notre Dame's new athletic director and you look at, the facilities that are going to be built here in the next year, let alone the next 10 years. And I feel like he's a little low on this list, Stiers. I really do.
I'm
feel
surprised
like,
Luke Fickell is ahead of him on this list.
So here we go.
That's what surprised me because like Luke
agreed.
Fickell's a good coach, but he's shown absolutely nothing so far at Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is about to be swallowed up unless Luke Fickell makes some huge move. Wisconsin's about to be swallowed up by all these
they're going to be
Pac-12 teams coming to the Midwest.
100%. And again, we're projecting over the next 10 years. Do we think Ryan Day is still going to be? I don't know. I don't think so. I think if we're looking at it, maybe his trajectory is here, but I feel like Marcus Freeman's is here. So I feel like Marcus Freeman should be a little higher. You know what I mean? Like, I guess I would have been happy with maybe 5 or 6 in that neighborhood.
I was surprised they went kind of like, to use like an NCAA tournament, bracket kind of thing. They went a little chalk with these picks.
They did. Absolutely. They went with the guys that are big now. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case 10 years from now. That's a long ways away.
The one exception, and Jason asks a good question, where is Dabo? The answer, not on this list.
That's because his trajectory is here, and that's a problem for Dabo. And we kind of talked about Clemson's, we talked about their rise and what he was able to do, and I think it's fantastic, but they're not projected to be Clemson, the Clemson of the last 5, 6, 7 years. They're just not projected to be that over the next 10 years. I don't think Dabo has embraced the transfer portal. I think that they haven't, they put a lot on some generational quarterbacks that they were able to get, and they haven't been able to get those the last couple of rounds of recruiting. Going back to DJ Uiagalelei, who is on his 3rd school, Cade Klubnik. Is he a generational quarterback? No. Is he a good quarterback? Sure. You know what I mean? Like, he's not Lawrence, he's just not that guy. And they built the Clemson dynasty on the backs of generational quarterbacks. They don't have that, So, yeah, I'm okay with him not being on this list, to be honest with you.
Now,
really am.
and if you look at the Freeman where he is on the list, number 9 is still top 10. Again,
sure.
I would have had him ahead of Fickell. Probably would have had him in front of Lane Kiffin as well, because I think Kiffin is interesting because, as they point out, and they really, what's kind of disappointing about this list is it's like a nice headline kind of thing, and it sucks you in, but they really don't give a lot of rationale for really why this person is at this point on the list. But like, they do point out that Lane Kiffin has not made it to the playoff yet. Now, neither is Marcus Freeman.
True.
But, and now is Mississippi, has it traditionally been a tough place to play? Yes. And Lane Kiffin has had some of the most successful runs there with its expanded format. If he keeps doing the same thing, sure, he'll be in the playoff. But is he really going to be someone, who shapes the next decade of college football?
Right.
I don't know, because
that's
I feel like, because again, define the next decade of college football is how they put it. And I think Kalen DeBoer, for as nice a job as he did at Washington, I think he is way too high.
Yeah, agreed. I don't want to cut you off, but I agree with you wholeheartedly, because we just don't know. Like, he's had success, obviously, as a head coach, but it's been very small sample size, right? And he's following Nick Saban.
Correct.
You always talk about the guy who follows the legend. Okay. That is not a tough task. I mean, that is a tough task. That's not going to be an easy situation for Kalen DeBoer to be in. He's still going to be successful, but is he going to be national championship, Nick Saban successful?
Look, I mean,
I
he
don't
starts
know.
losing 2 games a season, then,
Right.
this is why the SEC obviously wants all these guarantees of playoff
Sure.
spots and stuff like that.
Sure.
Now, how much does it matter that it's Alabama compared to, Ole Miss or whoever it happens to be? Obviously, the conference itself just wants the playoff spots, but yeah, I don't think you can just rubber stamp Kalen DeBoer because he had a couple good years at Washington. He's got to prove that he can go down there and keep this machine going because let's be honest, as nice as it was for him to do what he did in the Pac-12, he's now in the SEC.
Big difference.
Yes.
Big difference.
Yes.
He's actually going to have to deal with defenses. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Look, again, I'm not taking anything away from the success that he's had. He's had a ton of it, and they've been good. There's no doubt about it. But again, it's such a small sample size, and he wasn't playing under the microscope that is Alabama football.
Yeah. And did he have to go out and recruit a quarterback? We know that a lot of those guys, like he came into a pretty good situation where he had a lot of upperclassmen who stuck around for, he had a lot of fifth-year guys who stuck around up there. And he also was able to mine the transfer portal pretty well. And obviously, when you go out and you get Michael Penix because of the connection that he had to Penix before, that matters as well. Now, I mean, can he go out to the portal at Alabama? Yeah, but he's not going to have those same kind of relationships where he's just going to be able to pluck one of the top quarterbacks in the country and drop him into Alabama because he had that relationship. He's going to have to prove that he can go out and recruit to Alabama and please the boosters and a lot of things.
Look,
one 4-loss season and they're going to be singing a completely different tune down there.
He is now the head coach of Alabama. Alabama is football in that region, right? I mean, he was head coach at Washington, where they're the second best football team in the city.
Yeah.
From a popularity standpoint and all that,
it's a pro city.
To the Seahawks. I mean, that's just a fact. Alabama football, man, they're not competing against any professional team. They're not competing against any other collegiate team. That is you. You are the face of football in that region. And so it's a bigger microscope. It's a bigger spotlight. Maybe he has the success, but I think that's a awfully lofty projection for me to put him at number 2. I feel like if Nick Saban was still the coach, he still would have been number 2. You know what I mean? And they just kind of plugged Alabama into that number 2 spot, regardless of who the coach is.
Jason asks a good question here I was just starting to look for something. Who's the last coach to take over for a legendary coach and keep it going? Like the one that pops off the top of my head is like George Seifert taking over for Bill Walsh in San Francisco. But obviously that's been going on 40 years ago. Not quite 40, 35-ish years, something like that.
Yeah.
That's been a while. And I was just trying to think like when Casey Jones came in, to the Boston Celtics, for example, I can't remember if he came right after Red Auerbach or not, but again, that's even farther back, and like, if you look at college, it's just, you typically, look at what happened at North Carolina. Now, the most recent, Roy Williams, Hubert Davis gets Carolina to a national championship game relatively quickly. But think about when Dean Smith retired and they went through Guthridge and Doherty and, all that before they finally got to Roy Williams. There was kind of a bumpy period there. And, Shire has done a nice job in a short amount of time at Duke, but it's not like Duke has been dominant by any means since Shire took over.
Let's talk Notre Dame football. Okay. Does anybody, by a raise of a hand, know who came after Newt Rockne? Because I didn't. Hunk Anderson. Okay. No national championships, obviously, right? It took till you got to Frank Leahy, who won 4. And then you've got Edward McKeever took over after Frank Leahy. No success there. Okay. The only coach that had success after a successful head coach at Notre Dame was Dan Devine, who came in after Ara Parseghian. Okay. He obviously won a national championship in 77. After that, then who took over after Dan Devine? Jerry Faust. Not successful, right? Wow. Then you got Lou Holtz, and then you got Bob Davie. Okay. And they're still waiting for their next they're still waiting for their next head coach to win a national championship. So just Notre Dame in a microcosm, following a legendary coach who won a national championship. Notre Dame, haven't done well, right? So I just feel like this is a big job for Kalen DeBoer. It's just a big job for him. Maybe he does well. We'll see.
And so to answer my question about the Celtics, there were actually 5 coaches between Auerbach and Casey Jones, but Bill Russell and Tom Heinsohn, because the organization was so well put together and Auerbach was obviously still involved. They still won some championships in the meantime.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But I think Marcus Freeman on this list again, you might move him a couple spots higher, maybe at least 7th or something like that. But with what they point out, with how the recruiting is trending, as we've talked about, and the path to the playoff is still there. Everything is aligning. The quarterback recruiting is getting better, and I think all these different things, I think that he absolutely, I would put him ahead of Kalen DeBoer.
I would too.
For the potential for the next decade, because they're just kind of assuming that Kalen DeBoer is going to come in and keep the world lit
and there's
on
been
fire.
a lot of turnover down there at Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. I am not an Alabama insider, but I'm pretty sure he's had to kind of remake that roster because of defections or whatever the case may be. So is this going to be a Nick Saban-like roster when they get into fall? I don't know the answer to that. You know what I mean? So it's going to it's going to be a tough road, I think. It's going to be a tough road.
I think so as well. Okay, so the interesting name on this list, with just 30 guys making this list, they have a section of some assistant coaches as well. He was on the list, Al Washington, on the list of rising young assistants. Comes in at number 25 on this list of the 30 coaches who will make their mark, define college football over the next 10 years. Here's what they said. A decade ago, Dan Lanning was defensive backs coach at Sam Houston, so we need to save a couple of spots on this list for position coaches. A former star defensive tackle at Boston College, 39-year-old Washington has coached at Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. He's ranked 7th in the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiter rankings twice in the past 3 years. Nearly landed the head coaching job at his alma mater this offseason. His influences suggest that when he does get a top job, he'll know what to do with it. That's what ESPN says about Al Washington. So what do you think about Washington showing up on this list? I think it surprised a lot of people.
It surprised me. I wouldn't even pick him to be that guy from the Notre Dame staff, to be honest with you, let alone make this a national list, right? So I think the thing that surprised me the most is that his ranking as a recruiter on there, 2 out of the last 3 years that he's been, whatever it was, his recruiter, here it is. He's ranked 7th on the football recruiter rankings twice in the past 3 years. Wow. Okay. Didn't see that coming. First of all, Sean, I would put Deala McCullough above Washington, to be honest with you, as far as the next big thing in the head coaching world. I was a little surprised to see Al on there. I'm not saying he's not going to be successful, but like I said, he wouldn't even be the first guy I would have picked that's on Notre Dame staff right now.
Right. And it feels like, because they're using the example of Lanning and being a position coach at Sam Houston, and look where Dan Lanning is now, and that kind of stuff. And obviously Al Washington is a defensive line coach. He's interviewed for this Boston College job twice. And I think that just from an external view, the fact that a position coach went toe to toe with a former NFL coach, who and there was a lot of support for Al Washington at Boston College. I think that has a lot of influence on him showing up here. So the bigger question is, just pragmatically, is Al Washington really, like a head coaching, hot head coaching candidate in general, or is it just specific to Boston College? It feels much more specific to Boston College because that's his alma mater. The fact that he's been involved there twice, it's not like he's involved for other head coaching jobs or even defensive coordinator jobs that we know of at other places.
Well, and it felt like a very public hiring process at Boston College. And so he's right on the tip of the tongue of whoever wrote this. You know what I mean? So I could see how his name came up. That makes sense. I think Dylan McCullough was up for some jobs, but it was much more on the down low than the Boston College job. You know what I mean? Like, I just felt like the whole Boston College thing played out in the media to a degree, as opposed to maybe something that Dylan, and I think Dylan's waiting for the right spot too. But I also agree with you that Al Washington's candidacy for Boston College was very specific to Boston College. You know what I mean?
That's how it felt.
Because he's an alum, and it all made sense, and I'm sure he would have done a fine job. But I don't think a bunch of other schools were beating down the door to get Al Washington in as their head coach.
Right.
It was like a right time, right moment, a right moment type of situation with him.
Yeah, exactly. And, again, I do think that it plays in his favor, potentially. The fact that there was this, the guy who ended up getting the job, Bill O'Brien, had both college and NFL experience, and Washington made it hard for them to ultimately make that decision for O'Brien. But, how that pans out for him and just how influential he becomes in the next 10 years,
sure,
I'm a little bit more dubious.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agree. I just don't think he's on the precipice of being a head coach someplace.
Yeah.
And so to make this list, I feel like you've got to be real close to being a head coach. And I just don't know that he is that guy.
Right. So sticking with football for another question here. According to Dane Brugler's draft evaluation of Sam Hartman, the former Irish quarterback had 24 career fumbles. You would have had to do some pretty deep research to find that out. You kind of know Sam Hartman's fumble prone, but it's not like we were watching all his games at Wake Forest. But even if you were, you would have had to have really been keeping track to know he had that many fumbles. So my question to you is, do you buy or sell that fumbles and or even drop passes should be an official football statistic that show up on the stat sheet?
I am shocked, nay, dismayed that fumbles are not an official statistic. I had no idea that was the case until I read your question. I had no idea. I thought fumbles was something that was out there and very commonplace knowledge. So that should absolutely 100% be something that is an official statistic.
I've never figured out why the only negative statistic they really keep is interceptions for a quarterback, right?
I mean, fumbles is a massive turnover. It's a massive turnover. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Now, the drop passes one, I don't think that needs to be an official statistic.
Well, and the reason that I put drop passes is because, again, we're noting a quarterback's interceptions.
Yeah.
Not all the interceptions are the quarterback's fault.
Good point. Good point.
Sometimes there's a deflected ball, we don't.
And completion percentage is obviously affected by drop passes. So I get where you're coming from, because you could very easily then, look at a quarterback's completion percentage or number of completions and add in those drop passes. And obviously that would help their completion percent. You'd be like, look, it's not the quarterback's fault that these bozos drop the ball and that kind of a deal. So,
and that's what I'm saying. I think it gives you a more fair, true picture of, because first thing we do is look at a quarterback's completion percentage. And then we look 100%. At how many receptions a receiver has, but we don't look at how many other opportunities the receiver, some statistical places will give you targets and receptions, but even that doesn't tell a complete picture, because, he was targeted, but did he drop the ball, or was it
throwaway?
Right. Yeah. Was it somewhat catchable, but over his head and out of bounds? Right. Was it a pass that was defended by a defensive back or a linebacker? All those different things.
And I would be interested to see, if you have a official statistician, if it's a jump ball situation and you try to high point it and you don't catch it, is that a drop? Is that a pass defensed? You know what I mean? There would be some judgment calls in there, right?
Right.
Or even the drop passes, that would be a judgment call. Fumbles aren't a judgment call. You either fumbled it or you didn't. You know what I mean? That should absolutely be a statistic.
Right. And every offensive player who's a skill position guy it wouldn't be just be quarterbacks that you would be keeping track of. It would be quarterbacks,
Right.
running backs, receivers, tight ends. Anyone who has the ball, keep track of their fumbles. And I'm,
100%.
like I'm sure like some of the analytic places, like are keeping track of this, but it's not on like the standard football stat sheet, like the NCAA,
Craziness
statistics and things like that. So
crazy.
I think it should be because it tells a more true, complete story / picture of the player who you're talking about. All right. Fill in the blank. It's blank that after there were some internet rumors this week that Hannah Hidalgo was possibly going to transfer from Notre Dame. She posted a video on TikTok and Instagram last night of her and her head coach, Niele Ivey. They were laughing and smiling, and Hidalgo said on the post, "I'm not in the transfer portal, y'all."
I think that's fantastic, by the way. It's awesome. I good for her to kind of take these quote unquote rumors and just kind of have fun with it. You know what I mean? And not just sit on her hands, because that's when the rumors start to really expand out and get legs of its own and, the whole deal. So I'm glad she kind of put an end to it. Like, look, I'm not transferring. I'm here at Notre Dame. This is where I want to be. I love my head coach. Like, it said all of that in one quick video, which I loved. It was fantastic.
And the fact that it was with the head coach, it's not just I'm not in the transfer portal. It's with the head coach, and then at the tail end, it's got her and Kassan Prosper, who's her best friend on the team, and they're like doing their little dance and stuff like that, whatever that. But it started off with her and Niele Ivey, and it looked like they were like out at maybe at a restaurant or something like that.
Oh, nice! I haven't seen it. I have to check it out.
Okay, yeah, like they were, like it looked like maybe there was a menu on the table or something. But Niele Ivey was. She would, she kind of touched her ear a couple of times, and she was like showing the camera her ear.
Is it the hoops?
She was wearing those Hannah Hidalgo gold hoop earrings. So
that's right. Love it.
Yep. So Jason wants to show the dance. I don't think so.
No, come on.
Yeah. So I think that like if you're going to shut it down, you and the head coach laughing it up and having a good time,
right.
I think is the perfect way to do it. I don't think that there's a much better way to do it.
Yeah,
and like
100%.
It's funny because I never saw any of the original rumors. I only saw some of the reactions to the rumors. So like where this stuff comes from.
I never heard of this. I was completely on the outside of this whole thing. Like I had no idea that there were rumors that she was going to transfer. I had no idea. So yeah. I get my women's basketball rumors from you. So
yeah, I mean, it's, one of those things,
TikTok.
Starting to, now I don't doubt that there, could have been some, shady, school, big high profile school or two trying to make a run at her.
Oh, I'm sure
she's not in the portal. And that
I'm sure. I wonder what kind of money is out there for women's basketball.
Yeah, and that's
a legit question.
It's actually ND Sailor just say that. It would be wrong to think that women's basketball schools with big NIL budgets have not made overtures quietly. I do think I would not disregard that at all. I do think that there is a good possibility that did happen, even though she is not in the transfer portal.
Again, I don't know, what the money is like in women's basketball and transfer portal, NIL, all that fun stuff. I'm sure she's getting NIL money at Notre Dame, whatever that number is. But I mean, I know for a fact schools have reached out to Marcus Burton and offered a good chunk of change to him to transfer to a certain Big 12 school. And so glad he didn't do that, obviously. And so that he's at least being taken care of at Notre Dame. And, we'll see how this whole NBA draft process, pans out. But I'm curious to see how much money is out there in the women's world. You know what I mean? And
well, she did like a week, like it was right after the season. She made a post on Instagram as well about like like CAA, it's a sports agency, like that there was like an NIL summit or something like that, So I know that she is obviously she's someone who's sought after, and she has NIL deals, and and like the fact that she is working with an agency on this, she's going to have even more deals. And I just think that she's got a chance to raise her profile very high over the next season. Like if
100%,
if this team
100%
does what we all think that it's capable
of
doing.
This is an interesting comment that
What do
pulled
you
up.
think about this? Saylor also says it's probably like NIL backdoor is how Notre Dame lost Rico Flores. I don't
disagree greatly on that. It had nothing to do with NIL money at all. It had to do with the fact that the coach who loved him was fired. That's what I mean.
The position coach.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the bottom line, and that's not a big secret. You know, he was the favorite for whatever reason, good, bad, ugly, whatever. He was his favorite, and he was no longer the coach, and so Rico left. I mean, that's all there is to it. And then he goes to a school where their coach left, so that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. Thank you, D-Rock. He said, for legit news, check us out.
I mean, you're not wrong. Sean Stiers is the keeper of the news.
Look, and there's a lot of question. I actually just got a text from the boss about Maddie Westbeld and any updates. And
I bet you did.
All I know is I'm expecting her to stay.
Oh, me too.
Whether or not she decides she needs to make that announcement, like I thought it was coming after the April Fool's Day tweet that she had,
and now it's been 11 days since then. So
I know. Yeah. We're going on 2 weeks, but everything that I hear tells me to expect her to stay. Whether or not she actually makes an announcement, I don't know. Now, with all this stuff going on this week, it wouldn't hurt the program if she would just come out and say, "Hey, I'm staying for another year."
Right? Because now that the Hidalgo rumors are going to be put to bed, now you're going to hear all kind of Westbeld rumors, most likely. You know what I mean?
Right.
We'll just start it here. She's transferring. Yeah. Like, come on.
I can't believe you just said
rumors. Don't listen to the rumors, people. Come on.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Kentucky has hired an alum, Mark Pope, who has never won an NCAA tournament game as a coach, to replace John Calipari as their basketball coach.
I don't know if this is too strong of a word, but I want to say embarrassing for Kentucky, because he was clearly not their first choice. They were trying to woo multiple coaches, and I wasn't even paying that close of attention to the whole hiring process at Kentucky, but I heard at least 2 other names that they were going after hard, like sending jets and, all of these different things, going hard and getting rebuffed. So I think it's a little embarrassing. They had to go inside and they had to get an alum who's an okay coach and doesn't really have a track record to take over what is not even arguably a blue blood basketball program. I think they kind of messed up here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. All the alums love him because, of course, he did play for Kentucky and he helped them win a national championship in 1996. So I think that it's easy. It's like, oh, he played for a championship team. So the alumni base and, like Rick Pitino was out there posting a video and all these different things. But, look, you kind of take a guy like John Calipari for granted, obviously, with all the success that he had. The Final Fours and the fact that he did win a national championship. I realize it's been a little while since he won a title, but they got shot down by a few schools and some big names. The last I heard, Scott Drew was supposed to be negotiating with them, and then Mark Pope is the head coach. And, he took Utah Valley to the CBI a few years, and I think he's been to the NCAA tournament twice with BYU, but again, he hasn't won a game. So, they won the press conference, but we all know that there's a lot more to winning basketball than winning the press conference. Again, they all feel warm and fuzzy about him because he's one of their guys. But that's like just being an alum of the school does not qualify you to lead the program. So, I'm not a Kentucky fan. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe it won't. But it seems like a definite fallback. And I did see, Steph Davis – pointing out, well, Roy Williams, look at him. He was the 3rd assistant at North Carolina when he took over at Kansas back in, 1989. Okay.
But then he did good thing. I don't know.
Right. It's like he's still a little bit of an outlier,
Right.
Like it's not everyone ends up with that kind of success.
100%. I just feel like I don't know if they botched the interview process or just people didn't want to come to Kentucky for whatever reason. I think Hurley was on the list. There were some big name coaches on the list that they were trying to woo, and they all said no. So I don't know if is that an indictment on Kentucky itself? Is that, a pro of where they were? What does that mean exactly? And then they went to a guy that they knew would say yes and wrap that up real fast. You know what I mean? So I'm a little surprised they weren't able to get a bigger name, to be honest with you.
Yeah, D-Rock is saying that ESPN was reporting that Reagan Beers from Oregon State is in the portal. Most of that team, Beers, their other big, Tamia Gardner, and the guard Von Oelhoffen are all in the portal because Oregon State, since there's 2 teams left in the Pac-12, they're going to the West Coast Conference next year. So they've got some really good players in the portal. And I think I saw that Beers had like a no contact next to her. So sounds like maybe she knows exactly where she's going. But
yeah, they got a no contact.
Yes, that was their big girl. And DJ saying both of the guards. I had only seen Von Oelhoffen. So basically most of the team, it sounds like, from Oregon State is leaving because they're going to be relegated to small conference status with the breakdown of the Pac-12. So I mean, it's sad for them, sad for their program, sad for that coach who's been around for, I think, like 15 years himself out there right now and had put together a pretty good team. But there's also some nice potential candidates for Notre Dame to go after. They've got some firsthand experience with them. Like I said this yesterday, I was talking about the forward at Pittsburgh, Leah King, who averaged a double-double this season, and I think she was voted the most improved player in the ACC off the top of my head, but she's got a 5th year of eligibility, and she is in the portal right now. Like, you pair a 1-year, really good front court player like that with an incoming freshman like Koval, I think that would be a really nice matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
And gives you, just that many more options that you have. But like those Oregon State bigs would fit that bill as well. Although I guess they've got a little bit more eligibility.
A little depth. I mean, a little depth.
Yep. Sticking with basketball, which do you think, the men's Final Four was Monday night, and, all the talk earlier in the week, obviously, about the fact that the women's championship game outrated the men's game. So which do you think the men's college game misses more right now? The big name coaches who have retired in the last few years, like Krzyzewski, Boeheim, and Roy Williams, or does it miss more star players?
I think this is a great question, to be honest with you. And I'm going to be kind of quiet because they're about to do the national anthem.
Uh-oh. Do
you want to answer this one first?
Sure.
Because I don't want to be that guy.
Are they doing the anthem right now? Okay. Yeah. Oh, there. Vince just muted it, like right when it was starting. So I don't think that there's any doubt that they miss the coaches because the coaches become the program to an extent, especially when you've got big name guys like that, Krzyzewski, Boeheim, Williams. Now, I think that NIL and the portal and all those things and how long they've been involved in the game and everything else, dictated some of their decisions to step away when they did. I think it's the star players, though, because to me, Zach Edey was one of the few players going into the tournament that most people knew. But why did you know Zach Edey? Because he's been around for as long as because he's big, as Vince just, lifted his, he's been around for as long as he was around, right? He's been in school for more than a year and a half. That's what the college game, or the men's college game specifically misses compared to the women's game. Caitlin Clark took her team to a national championship game last year, and then she was back again for her senior season. If that was the men's game and she had and it was a men's player who basically peaked, got his team to the national championship game as a junior and was that kind of commodity, he's gone to the NBA where he can make some money. I mean, look at Marcus Burton at Notre Dame, testing the waters like he is with the NBA and doing all that stuff. And like Vince was saying earlier, with the NIL opportunities and things like that. But Caitlin Clark is back for another year, and she helped pull the game up with it. And there are obviously other stars like Beckers and the young stars like Watkins and Hidalgo, like who are going to be bringing the game up as well. But in the women's game, they stay around for at least 4 years. The men's game, they don't. The best players are gone after a year, and some of them these days aren't even getting to college because they're just going to the G League where they can make a little money and not have to worry about school right away. So I think they miss the stars the most, but there's just not as much overall interest because, again, it just probably says you're old, by saying this, but like those Duke teams with Christian Laettner and Bobby Hurley and Grant Hill, and those UCLA teams with Tyus Edney and Ed O'Bannon and those guys, and the Arkansas teams with Corliss Williamson and Scotty Thurman and those kind of teams those guys were all together for at least 3 years. And the farther you went into the 90s and into the early 2000s, you just don't. We've lost that in the men's game, and I think that's what's really lacking with the men's game.
This is like a chicken and the egg for me. You know what I mean? As far as like who do you want more? You know what I mean? And I think my gut, I decided I wanted to go with the coaches. I like your argument though, and I'm so easily swayed at things. But I initially thought coaches because I think they do miss some of those, big time Coach K, and you named them off. I mean,
and they are at least part of a draw, especially when you get into tournament and TV and stuff like that.
100%.
The fact that those guys are attached to those programs.
100%. And Hurley is probably going to become one of those guys. I mean, he's winning national championships at UConn and all these different things. And when you look at the women's game, I think the women's game used to be more about the coaches, and now it's slowly kind of maybe adjusting to the players. Because if you look at what it used to be, it was Pat Summitt, it was Gino Auriemma, it was, Muffet McGraw, it was the coaches, right? And now I think it's slowly kind of moving towards the players in the women's game. Because for an example, from my own point of view, I know Caitlin Clark. I could not tell you who her coach was at Iowa. I couldn't. I have no idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I'm a casual women's basketball fan outside of Notre Dame.
Sure.
Right. And so I don't know who the coach was. I know who most of the big coaches are in the men's game. So I don't know. I think they do miss some of the big name coaches though, but I don't know who's going to step up and take that mantle. Because I think maybe that period is gone where you've got coaches that stay at one place for 20 years. And look at Calipari, for example, right? He's a big name coach. You thought he was going to be at Kentucky for the duration. Not so much. They were looking to try to get out of his contract.
Well, that's what I was thinking the same thing. Like he was a big name coach and he's gone.
And now he's at Arkansas. So I think it's a change in the dynamic too. I don't think coaches are going to stay long enough to become iconic coaches with one team. I think that's part of the problem. Like the Izzos of the world, I think those are more few and far between. Tom Izzo's never going to leave Michigan State. Doesn't matter how much money somebody throws at him. He's never going to leave.
And I've been wondering about that with all these other guys leaving. Like, how long is Izzo going to stick around?
But you knew Coach K wasn't ever going to leave Duke. You know what I mean? Like those coaches weren't ever going to leave. And now I think you're going to have more movement among these coaches with the money that's being thrown around.
Good call out by the chat there. I think Tommy and Stymie forgot about the Fab Five. I mean, those guys were obviously together as well.
And who's their coach? I know you probably know this, but I don't.
It was Fisher, right? Yeah, it was Fisher. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It was still Fisher.
You had to think about it, right? I mean, so
I had to think, because they obviously won the championship in '89, and I had to think, hold it, did Fisher? Yeah. So like he got, he became the head coach in '89, because of the guy went to San Diego State.
Right.
And so he was still the head coach in the Fab Five. But yeah, I did have to think about it there for a second. Just to make sure.
Again, it's chicken and egg for me. So, but I think having both would be ideal. But I think it's going to be more player driven. It's just the problem with the men's game is the great players just aren't around long enough. And I've always felt that's going to kill college basketball to a degree anyway. All the one and dones and things like that. I
think Williamson at Duke was like the last really big men's star, it seems like.
Sure.
And that's been 4 years now at this point, going on 5 years, something like that. So I think that there is a huge void that those stars have left. And I think that, that's had a big effect on the men's game. Okay, Vince,
This is
non-sports topic,
great.
but we've talked toilet paper before, we've talked plenty of, non-sports things. When you go to the store, maybe specifically the grocery store, like if you want to, get, drill down a little bit, how likely are you to use the self-checkout line versus going to the line with the cashier?
I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about this. I will give the notice that I don't do the majority of the grocery shopping, so my cart is not like overflowing with groceries when I go to the grocery store. Okay, so I don't have the,
and that's probably a good way to specify as well,
right?
Okay, but I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
You go ahead. You go.
So when I go to the store, I'm always going to self checkout personally. Always. There is a bit of I don't trust that guy because they're kind of stupid. There is I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to do it myself. So I go to self checkout every time there's an option. If I had like the curved cart, just like overflowing, I'm going to go to a human being and let them do all the hard work.
See, I'm the same way, but typically, because when we moved a few years ago, we live like a half mile from a Meijer. So I go. Basically, it's like it's a lot easier than it used to be. It's like, oh, we need something, so I'll just run over and grab five things. 5 things or $50, but that's another story. But
seriously.
But it's just, I'm the same way. It's like, if it's just a few things, I'm going to go to the self-checkout line. And they've even got like a micro version where like at Meijer, where if you've got 5 items or less, you can go to this special little checkouts, and it's like boom, boom, boom. And
beautiful.
You can even kind of cheat it sometimes, but it's fun because I was listening to another podcast, and my mother-in-law is like this as well. Like, she is one of these, why should I do the work of the person who's supposed to be doing the job and not go? And it's like, again, if I'm with my wife, or if I happen to be like, like she's been dealing with her ankle for the last couple of months. So, I've done a couple solo, like full blown,
the big ones. Yeah.
I'm not going to bag a full cart full of stuff my own.
Right.
If it's a full cart, I'm going to the cashier. But if it's like 15 items or less or whatever, I'm going to the self-checkout because, one,
I'm quicker than the people that are
I want the quickest line. I want in and out.
Yeah, man. Exactly.
I don't want to have to mess with.
And the other part about self-checkout is there's usually, 4, 6, 8 different terminals. And so, it generally moves pretty quickly. And then you do the old boop, little iPhone, little Apple Pay, boom, boom, boom. In, out, over. I would say the only place that I generally avoid self-checkout is at Costco. I go to the humans at Costco unless the line is ridiculous, because I'm usually there to get like water softener, salt, like big, massive items. You know what I mean? It's just easier.
See, we don't like when we go to Costco, we actually usually do the self-checkout there too, because, but they still have someone who kind of comes over and helps you
a
little bit.
They do.
But it's typically because we don't get like a whole massive cart full of stuff there, just because stuff costs so much.
Family like 7.
Like we get our 8 to 10 things and we're out of there.
We use our membership at Costco with the family size that we have, at the present. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Anthony says if it's 8 items or less, he's self-checkout. Above 8, live person. I was just wondering, like how many people would be, like that attitude that I, like my mother-in-law. And
I've heard that.
Heard somebody else say it. Like, I'm not gonna do the work that someone's getting paid to do and whatever else, no matter how many things I've got.
Well, and then you get people that complain when cashiers like sit down. Have you heard people complain about that? Like, who cares?
They're doing their job, right?
They're still moving your stuff.
As long as their hands are moving, as long as it's scanning.
Why does it matter, man? Like,
I know.
You just want to upgrade the degree of difficulty? Like, who cares? Matter.
Yeah, Eddie Saylor says guys want to make a surgical strike when they're shopping. Women like to shop and use the cashiers. I think that is
My kids love going
Mine
shopping
as
with
well.
my wife because she actually shops and, looks at stuff, and they hate going with me because I'm in and out, man. Like I don't mess around.
Going for specific stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm not piddling around.
Nope.
when I'm
I
over
tell my
there.
wife all the time, you give me a list, I'll nail the list and I'm out. Like there's nothing extra. And if you don't get me before I get to the cash register, I'm not going back in. This is a one-way street.
I did have to make a couple trips the other day because, of course, I forgot one of the prime things that I went to the store for. I love it when I do that.
I know. Seriously.
And it was coffee too. It's like I cannot
Ooh.
function the next because I was getting ready to make, like set the coffee pot the night before, and I'm like, are you kidding? I went to the store today
and forgot
coffee.
Hey, Meyer's open 24 hours, buddy.
That's right. And I did find out that going over there after 8:00 was a lot more pleasant than going there
Solid
anytime before 8:00 that I've ever been.
I hate people.
So
I hate people so much.
When we were in college or right after college, I think we used to go to a 24-hour grocery store, and we'd go over there like 11 o'clock, midnight.
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful.
100%. I used to do that when I was in college and I had a roommate and we lived in an apartment, and we would purposely go at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Number one, you get in and out, but number two, there's some really fun people that are out at that hour that you can make fun of and just have some fun with, that kind of a deal. But, you want to be there when they're stocking the shelves. You know what I mean? There's nobody else there. You can get what you need, get the heck out of there. I'm with you. I can't keep those kind of hours anymore.
I know.
Not even close.
Not at all. All right. Well, we're headed to Notre Dame tomorrow. Watch a little practice, some live scrimmage stuff, and we'll be talking about it, of course. I know Brian will probably be popping in sometime this weekend, but I will be back on Monday, so we'll have plenty to talk about. How's the track meet going over there?
We are 2 events in, and so my son has not run yet, and so I think it's going pretty well so far. It's like an invite, so there's like 7 different schools and varsity only, which is nice. So very windy. Not going to set a whole lot of PRs, I wouldn't think, today. So it's all about beating the guy next to you.
Yep. Well, like I was saying earlier, if you don't mind, hit that like button. And I'm really asking you sincerely today because I've said, if you didn't hear me in the middle of the show, there's some fishy stuff going on.
I'm going to need to know what this is all about. I need a full report of this investigation.
I think there's some analytical things going on. People trying to affect our analytics. So smash that like button. And of course, your podcast platform, subscribe, rate, review. But hit the like button. It's very easy to do before you leave. That's right. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you Monday on IB Nation Sports Talk.